A demonstration of a workflow I call Autochart. I'm just going to go ahead and start the workflow going, and then I'm going to come back and give a demonstration of exactly what it's doing. The workflow starts just through a user action, so you basically have a file named with a job number, possibly a suffix, and you choose the workflow. In this case, I'm using a non-live workflow, and I'm just going to leave everything as is. Switch to the insert, run the user action. In this case, I do want to respect even and odd pages. This is a 4-page insert. Jacket, run the user action, but I'm not going to change any options. I'm just leaving it as supplied. And lastly, I have 1 ink page, 2 effect page, 1 emboss, 1 spot gloss. Same thing, run the user action, leaving all these variables as supplied. Okay, so basically this file represents a supplied PDF from the customer. You can see it's a multi-page, first one representing the inks, and then I have a file here representing spot gloss, and finally a page representing emboss. One thing is pretty common, you can see it's actually built out of 4-color process. We prefer our effects are black. I'm just going to point that out because when the job finishes, that'll be black only. But basically, this workflow takes a supplied file like this. In this case, the trim box isn't accurate, but it is centered. But there are no marks. A big part of what we do is book components, and each product requires special marks basically. So in this case, it's a case cover. The binder wants to see, the back panel width marks, the backspace marks, spine marks, 11/16 bleed or whatever the full bleed would be. Typically we just need 1/8 inch, but in this case cover requires full bleeds. Jacket. This is the supplied PDF. So I have corner marks, but I don't have any other marks. No spine marks, flat marks. But if you look at the binders template, this is what we basically have to end up with. Marks representing these individual dimensions. The insert is just a 4-page insert. I don't have a template for that, but basically page 2 and page 4, well, the even pages should have different outside trims. So page 1, could have 16th on the left and 1/8 on the right. Page 2 should have an 1/8 on the left, 16th on the right. So that's why I had to select that respect even and odd pages. And paperback. This is a supplied file, pretty typical of what we receive. The trim box is inaccurate. I have extra content over here on the right. And it's basically going to take this file, and instead of just having the marks that you see here, it should end up having marks that represent a chart similar to this. See different head trim, different foot trim. Okay, so basically while these are going through, let me switch over to the actual workflow so you can see a simple version of what exactly is going on. Well, the file comes in, and based on the job number and any suffix, that job number gets married up with variables that are found in our database. So it matches the job number up to database variables, and based on those variables it sets the dimensions. So the back flap based on the type of product equals a certain dimension. All those dimensions are put in memory at this point, and then the job gets pre-flighted just for your common mistakes and common things that the workflow actually needs to run correctly. It then is auto trimmed. So like on that paper bag example, rather than having a file that's offset to the left, it tries to find the marks, centers it. If the job requires remapping, does that here. If the job requires trapping, does it here. And then it shoots a file showing the traps back to ES. Then it sets the page margins uh, so that the extra content outside of the trim box isn't visible when the binder's marks are actually put on top of the supplied PDF. And then here, the actual dimensions of what panel A equals panel B in the spine, all those dimensions are set here, and that tells Merge XP which template basically, or how to create that template. It's not, or this workflow isn't picking up pre-existing templates, it's creating them on the fly based on the information that it gets from the database. After it puts the marks on based on those variables, then it just adds additional slug information, the flat number of the job, customer service representative, uh, dimensions. Then it just basically just decorates it, with the colors of the job, converts it to a 1.3, shoots the job back to ES so you can visualize it or compare it there. It also has the final charted job layered over top of the original so you can compare it there. And it then transfers the job to like a live area on our server, and it also pushes it to a folder in ES where customer service can view the file. So going back, it looks like down to one job, and it's almost done. Okay, so if I start with the case cover, okay, I started with the ink page and emboss and a spot gloss. And remember, these files were the ones that were built in CMYK. I need those effect files to be black. Here's the file that's been charted. You can see it's now black only. If I open up that, okay, so now I have a job black only, and I have marks which represent what the binders require. Same thing with my ink page. And you can see here it also shoots back the trapped version, so you can compare the traps or exactly what it did during the trap. Just turn off the cleaned, and you can look at what was actually added to the file as far as traps are concerned. It creates this comparison page for the ink, or the first page that goes into ES. So you'll notice it's not creating one for the effect files, but for the ink page I have a comparison. It's a layered file. I can turn the charted one off, make sure that it kept the positioning of the supplied trim box, or that at least the two match. And it's showing you basically the trapped version compared to the original. So it's just a way for us to double check that nothing got shifted, nothing got messed up during the workflow. Here's the jacket. My comparison file. Doesn't look like much trapped on this particular job. Final file. The rules are represented as a spot color, so we can easily turn those on and off. Let me show you some of the information the slug line does. It basically puts the time, the current number, the flat number, the ISBN 13 and 10, current CSR, trim size, untrimmed size, and the dimensions. That's basically what ES is converting those variables to. It's also putting color information there, color information there, title there, more information here. Basically, this is the file that we proof and send out to the customer. As far as the insert, remember this is the one where the even pages should be treated differently than the odd. So if you'll notice here, I have less space on the left, more space on the right. If I go to page 2, more space on the left, less space on the right. And lastly, paperback. Here's my comparison page. So you notice I got all this junk in the original file, but my charted page has that information blocked out. So that's basically the gist of the workflow. It's a big chunk of our work. It used to take us at least probably 10 minutes to do one. So there we knocked out 4 in about 5 minutes. Like I said, going back to the workflow, this is the simplified version, and it truly is simplified. A little embarrassed to show you, but the real workflow is actually this. Because a PDF is not a PDF, there are so many variables, based on this, it goes one way, based on something else, it goes another, and it just ended up being that way. I know I can simplify it, but that's the current way it is at this moment.